So now we start talking about exemptions. This is where things start to diverge a little bit. So what are exemptions, first of all? Exemptions are provided for specific applications where exceeding the restricted substance threshold is permitted. So there are cases, narrowly defined cases, where we've decided that it's just not technically feasible to remove those substances from those applications. An example is lead in white glasses used in optical applications. When we're building optical glass, there are times where we need to incorporate lead into the glass matrix to achieve certain optical properties. And that might exceed the 1,000 parts per million threshold that's been put on us for the RoHS regulation. So we've been provided an exemption that allows us to contain more than 0.1% lead if we have it in white glasses that are used in optical applications. There's lots of other exemptions just like this. There's a big long list of these. Prior to January 1st of this year, the UK RoHS regulations referenced the EU RoHS Directive Annexes 3 and 4 for those exemptions. So as those exemptions change, they be updated, because these exemptions are updated all the time because they have to be renewed because they expire. And also industry is free to request new exemptions all the time, and they do. So because this exemption list is dynamic, rather than try and update the UK regulation every single time an exemption changed status, they simply link to it in UK RoHS. But now after Brexit, UK RoHS no longer does that. And that was applied by the Hazardous Substances in Packaging Regulations 2020 amendment, which actually removed that link and created a new exemption process and a new exemption list for UK RoHS. So now we have EU RoHS and UK RoHS that have two separate exemption lists, and they're updated and maintained using two separate processes. Luckily, the initial UK RoHS exemption list has largely been adopted in alignment with the current EU exemptions, which means that if you're claiming an EU exemption today, there is an equivalent UK exemption. There is no cases where EU exemption being claimed today is not valid in UK, although there are some structural differences. However, any new future EU exemptions that are adopted will not automatically be adopted into the UK, as well as any exemption changes or renewals. Those will not automatically flow through anymore to the UK because there's no link. The UK has a unique process for industry to request new exemptions and a unique process to request extensions to the expiry dates of the existing exemptions. So now we have two competing processes, one in the EU and one in the UK. If you have an exemption you want extended, you're going to have to submit requests to both. And then you're going to have to hope that the technical reviewers in the UK and the technical reviewers in the EU come up with similar responses when they update their regulations so that we don't end up with two different requirements. There is no connection between these two processes. So it's believed that over time, divergence will occur. Now, the question I think everybody's probably thinking of right now is, well, what about the exemptions that are currently under review with no expiration dates? And I'm talking specifically about PAC 22. We're talking about exemption 7A, 7C1, 6C. We're talking about the exemptions that are used by almost all electronics products, right? So we have these kinds of heavily used exemptions that are unknown in their status at EU. We're expecting a response towards the end of this year. So we'll immediately go out of sync as soon as that happens, right? So what they've done is when they created the UK exemption list, they identified those EU exemptions that are in transition, and they noted those as transitional case. Any items that are noted as transitional case in the UK RoHS exemption list are subject to modification by the UK Secretary of State once the EU makes their decision. So the EU will make their decisions on this. For example, they might choose to extend 7C1 for another 4 years. If they do so, then the UK Secretary of State can unilaterally decide to adopt that change in the UK as well in order to maintain harmonization. Or the Secretary of State could decide to take some other action, for example, letting them expire or making some other date, right? My feeling is that as long as we're in the transition period, any changes to the exemptions will be applied by the UK Secretary of State in the same form as the EU to maintain the transition period. Otherwise, the transition period would end, right? So we don't have that immediate risk for those PAC 22, PAC 24 exemptions. The Secretary of State's going to hopefully work to keep those in alignment.
Learn more by viewing the full-length video online at greensoft.com/videos. Plus, learn about our environmental regulation solutions online at greensoft.com.